Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new video. In this one, I'm going to be going over the top 5 best class setups to use here in Modern Warfare Warzone. So of course guys, welcome back to a brand new Modern Warfare Warzone video here on the channel, and of course for this one, I'm going to be going over and detailing the best class setups to use here in Modern Warfare Battle Royale. If you guys didn't already know, unlike a lot of other Battle Royale games, in Warzone you can actually use custom classes. Now, of course how you unlock these particular custom classes is not the same way that you unlock them and use them in multiplayer, being that how you actually get these class setups is through drop kits, which are basically care packages that spawn in every single new circle, and then once they land you can go over to them and then select a class setup that you guys designed. Alongside this, you can also purchase some drop kits, so if let's say you really want to use your own custom class setup, you can use your in-game cash to actually buy a drop kit. Now this is a feature that I find rather interesting, and if you guys really want to succeed in Modern Warfare Warzone, you're gonna want to have some pretty solid class setups, so that's exactly what we'll be covering in today's video. So yeah guys, with all that said, if you go on to enjoy this one, make sure you leave a like on it down below. Also subscribe for more Modern Warfare as well as Warzone content. So yeah, now that I got the intro out of the way, let's actually dive right into the commentary. And alright guys, as you can see over here, these are the class setups. Now starting off with our first one, of course we are going to be using the FAL. Now that's the thing, the FAL is honestly a really good assault rifle if you are going to be playing Warzone, and that's just because the FAL has really good damage, the recoil is extremely low, and since this particular weapon is semi-automatic, it means that you can perform very well at those medium to longer ranges, and basically the FAL excels at those ranges where a fully automatic assault rifle really starts to drop off. So with that said, now let's talk a little bit about the attachments. For our first one, we are going to be using the XRK Marksman Barrel, which is going to be increasing the damage range, bullet velocity, as well as recoil control, and this is extremely useful because it will mean that the FAL is going to be doing some more damage at those longer ranges, which is extremely useful. For our second one, we are going to be using the Integral Hybrid Scope, and the reason why I really like using this particular scope, and that's just because for one, it has a reflex sight, so that means if you do get into a close to medium range engagement, you can always use the reflex sight and perform very well. However, if there are some opponents at those longer ranges, you can switch over to the ACOG scope and then you can take them out very effectively. For our third one, we are going to be using FMJ, which is of course going to be increasing the bullet penetration and damage through walls. So let's say you get into a game of Warzone and you get into a situation where you see a person, you start shooting at him with the FAL and he ducks around the corner. However, with FMJ, you can shoot through that wall and you can very effectively take him out. So that's something that is extremely useful on the FAL, so that's how come we are going to be using it. Our fourth one is of course going to be the 30 round magazine, which means that when we are going to be using this weapon, we really don't have to worry about reloading. And of course for our final one, we are going to be using the Merc Foregrip, which is going to be increasing the recoil control and is overall just going to stabilize this weapon a lot more. For our secondary, we are going to be overkilling a P90, and at least from my own experience, the P90 really complements the FAL because of course you can use the FAL at those medium to longer ranges. However, in those close range situations, you can switch over to the P90. Our attachments are of course going to be the Monolithic Suppressor Fly Strap for our stock. For our perks, we will be using Sleight of Hand, as well as for our rear grip, as well as our underbarrel, we are going to be using the Stifled Grip Tape. Now alternatively, you can always use the 1 milliwatt or 5 milliwatt laser. However, the problem is of course is that the laser is visible to enemies, so if you are going to be using a laser, make sure you keep that in mind. For our perk setup, we will be using Scavenger, Overkill, as well as Battle Hardened. Then for our lethal, we will be using C4, and our tactical is going to be Stim Shot. And let me just say, if you are going to be playing Warzone, you're going to want to run Stim Shot. It's extremely useful. So yeah, that's of course going to be our first class setup. Now moving down to our second one, we do have a sniping class setup. So of course for our primary weapon, we will be using the HDR, which is a really good sniper rifle in Warzone, and that's just because of the damage. Basically at all ranges, you can get a consistent 1 or 2 hit kill, and that's extremely useful, so that's how come we will be using the HDR. Talking a little bit about the attachments, for our first one, we will be using the 26.9 inch HDR Pro Barrel, which is going to be increasing the damage range, bullet velocity, as well as recoil control, and it's overall just going to give this weapon a little bit more range. For our second one, we are going to be using the Variable Zoom Scope. For our third one, we are going to be using the F-Tag Stalker Scout Stock. Yes, that's a little bit of a mouthful, however this one is going to be increasing the aim down sight speed. Similar to the FAL, we are going to be using FMJ, which is going to be increasing the bullet penetration, and then for our final one, we will be using the 9 round magazine. For our secondary, we will be using the RPG, which let me just say, the RPG is actually surprisingly good in Warzone, so that's how come we will be using it. Now moving over to our perk setup, we will be using Scavenger, Ghost, and Battle Hardened. Now let me just say, in Warzone, there are 2 perks that are extremely useful and are easily the best ones in the game, and that is either Ghost or Overkill. And for all my other class setups, I use Overkill. However, this one I decided to use Ghost because of course we are using a sniper rifle, and that's how come our secondary is going to be the RPG. RPG. Now, if you are going to be using this class setup, I would recommend it is of course have the HDR as your primary weapon. However, if you don't want to use the RPG-7, swap it out for an assault rifle or some machine gun, and that's going to be extremely useful because you will have the benefits of having Ghost, and in a way you are going to be overkilling a secondary weapon. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. So moving over, of course, our lethal is going to be C4, as well as our tactical, it's going to be stim shot, very similar to the last class setup. Now, moving over to our third one, we do have a very tried and true assault rifle class, and of course we are going to be overkilling the Kar 98K. Starting off for our primary weapon, we will be using the XRK variation of the M4A1, and to know if you don't have this particular variant, you can always use the standard version of the M4. For our first one, we will be using the Corvus Custom Marksman Barrel, which will be increasing the damage range, bullet velocity, as well as recoil control. For our second one, we are going to be using the M16 stock, which will be increasing the aiming stability. Our third one is going to be the Stipple Grip Tape, which will be increasing the aim down sight speed, as well as the sprint to fire speed. And then for our fourth one, we are going to be using the 60 round magazine, which will allow us to spray a little bit when we are using this weapon, and that's extremely useful. Of course, for our final one, we are going to be using the Merc Foregrip, which is going to be overall reducing the recoil of this weapon, and that's going to prove very effective. For our secondary, we will be using the Kar 98K, which is extremely useful because of course you can use the M4A1 at those close to medium range engagements. However, you can switch over to the Kar and take some sniper shots and be a little bit more effective at those longer ranges. Now, when it comes to using a sniper rifle as a secondary, my favorites are the HDR as well as the Kar 98K, and when it comes to sniping, they're kind of on opposite sides of the spectrum because you have the HDR, which is a very heavy duty sniper rifle, however it's quite slow, and then you have the Kar 98K, which does less damage, however is a very quick sniper rifle, especially if you are going to be using these attachments. So for our first one, we are going to be using the Syngard Custom 25.1 inch barrel, which of course is going to be increasing the damage range, bullet velocity, as well as recoil control. Our second one is of course going to be the classic sniper scope, and then of course for our third one, we are going to be using the F-Tac Sport Comb Stock, which is going to be increasing the aim down sight speed. Our fourth one is going to be sleight of hand, as well as our final one, it's going to be the Stipple Grip Tape, which will be increasing the aim down sight speed as well as the sprint to fire speed. For our perk setup, we will be using Scavenger, Overkill, as well as Battle Hardened, and then similar to the other class setups, for my lethal, I will be using C4, and my tactical is going to be Stim Shot. So now let's move over to our fourth class setup, and this is going to be with the Ram 7, which is debatably one of the best assault rifles in this game. And yeah, with that said, let's just dive right into it. So for our first one, we are going to be using the XRK Ranger Barrel, which will be increasing the damage range, bullet velocity, as well as recoil control. It's overall just going to give us a little bit more range as well as power on the Ram. For our second one, we are going to be using the holographic sight, which is a very versatile sight, being that the sight is relatively low zoom, so that means you can very effectively take out opponents at close range. However, on the flip side, you do get enough zoom so that way you can effectively take out opponents at medium to longer ranges. With that said, our third one is going to be the Stipple Grip Tape, which will be increasing the aim down sight speed as well as the sprint to fire speed. Our fourth one is going to be the 50 round magazine, which is going to allow us to spray a little bit more when we are using this weapon. And of course, our final one is going to be the Merc Foregrip, which will be increasing the recoil control. For our secondary, of course, we will be using the Kar 98K, very similar to the M4A1 class setup, and then basically everything else is identical. Our perk setup is going to be Scavenger, Overkill, and Battle Hardened. Lethal is of course going to be C4, and our tactical is going to be Stim Shot. So yeah, now let's move over to our final class setup, and this is going to be with the FR556 or the FAMAS, and let's just dive right into it. So for our first one, we are going to be using the FR 24.4 inch sniper barrel, which is going to be increasing the damage range, bullet velocity, and recoil control, and is overall just going to make this weapon more powerful at those longer ranges. Our second one is going to be the 4x zoom flip hybrid scope, which is going to allow us to swap between a holographic sight as well as an ACOG scope, and is overall very effective on the FAMAS. For our third one, we are going to be using the Stipple Grip Tape again, which is going to be increasing the aim down sight speed as well as sprint to fire speed. Our fourth one is going to be the 50 round magazine. Now alternatively, you could use the 60 round magazine. However, a lot of the attachments I am running on this weapon really slow down the movement speed. At least from my own experience, you can get away with using the 50 round magazine and your movement speed isn't going to be too affected. However, if you bump up to a 60 round magazine, that's where you really start to notice the slower movement speed. But hey, if you want those extra 10 rounds, go for it. Now, of course, for our final one, we will be using the Merc Foregrip, which is going to be reducing the recoil and is overall just going to allow us to be a little bit more accurate at those longer ranges. And then for our secondary, we will be using the M19. Now, similar to my HDR class setup, for this one, I am going to be running Ghost instead of Overkill, so that's how come we will be using the M19. And also, talking a little bit about the secondary, for attachments, our first one is going to be the XRK L Super Barrel, our second one is going to be Sleight of Hand, third one is the Stipple Grip Tape, the fourth one is the 32 round magazine, and the final one is the lightweight trigger. Our first setup is of course going to be Scavenger, Ghost, and Battle Hardened. Our lethal is going to be C4, and our tactical is going to be Stim Shot. So yeah guys, those are overall my 5 best class setups to use when you are going to be playing Warzone. Of course, for most of them, I did end up using assault rifles, and that's just because from my own experience, when you are going to be playing Warzone, you want to use an assault rifle, and basically if you want to use any other weapon category, run overkill and use it as a secondary weapon. For example, if you want to run a submachine gun, use it as a secondary weapon. However, keep your primary assault rifle, because let me just say, some machine guns are good at those close range engagements, but in Warzone there are so many medium to longer range engagements that you just simply cannot use as a machine gun. So yeah guys, that's gonna effectively wrap up today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, don't forget to leave a like on it down below, as well as make sure to subscribe for more Modern Warfare as well as Warzone content. So yeah, again, that's gonna effectively wrap up today's video. I hope to see you in the next one.